I'd like to emphasize the complexity of AI tech that's coming out right now. So this year especially, and the years I think moving forward, we see agentic systems moving into not just demoing, but production. And what that means is you're now having systems that are interacting with environments that you don't fully control, that are interacting in multiple steps over time. And what that means is errors compound. You may not be able to do real A/B testing or counterfactual analysis of those systems because you don't control Google, you don't control your calendar getting invite requests from random people on the internet, you don't control a Slack channel even. And I think this is both a challenge and an opportunity in the sense that here's the opportunity. The complexity of these systems actually moves sort of evaluation as, caring about accuracy or caring about some of these nerdier metrics that were traditionally hard to talk about to non-technical people, more toward the human KPIs that individual employees at companies care about. It's more about, did my complex system actually do the tasks that I care about? Did it increase top of funnel if I'm in advertising or if I'm in sales, or did it increase conversion rate? Things that are the same sort of metrics on which a human or a team would be judged at a corporation. And I call this an opportunity because it means that it's easier to have the conversation or an evaluation of systems moving forward. And I've been in this space for nearly a decade in the eval observability space, and I've watched it go from very hard to have those eval conversations outside of the CIO or the CTO's office to increasingly top of mind for the entire C-suite, which makes it very easy to discuss. Now, the challenge part of this is that these are increasingly complex systems, and they're operating in autonomous or semi-autonomous ways, and that opens up a whole can of worms when it comes to evals and attack services and so on. One of the side effects of AI being top of mind across the entire C-suite and not just technical CTO, CIO, and CISO types right now means that this is top of mind for basically everybody, and that includes the government, policymakers, politicians, and so on. And so I don't think it's a difficult bet to make that the next couple of years will involve legislation at the state level, legislation at the national level, and a lot of discussions around sovereign AI moving forward. And I'm glad that these discussions are happening. We do need to, obviously, as folks who are in this space, have a loud voice and have an opinion about how that, policymaking should progress, because these systems are increasingly complex. When it comes to thinking about complex systems, I'm glad that policymakers are now more informed, I would say, by the tech community, by GRC from enterprises, by the investor community, to be having these discussions, because I'm not hyper pro regulation in general. I'm pro open source. I'm pro owning your own data. I'm pro privacy. I'm pro a lot of the traditional sort of values that built the decentralized internet that we all grew up on. But the truth of the matter is that those regulations are going to have to come at some point, and I would rather they be via informed, community-driven approach than just coming from on high without information. And so the next couple of years, I think we'll see increasingly educational content coming out and more sort of stakeholders entering into these discussions because, frankly, the technology is not something that people shy away from thinking about these days. To the extent that leaders can, being transparent and being open about what they're doing behind the scenes is very valuable, not just from an ethical point of view, but also from a business point of view. In that, if I'm running a complex system or if I'm buying a complex system from a vendor, I would love to know what's changing behind the scenes. I would love to know if I buy it on a Monday, is a model going to flip out and then perform in a different way on a Tuesday or not? I want to have that sort of control. When it comes to, selling any sort of governance stuff around AI, I think openness matters there a lot as well. So ChatGPT launched November 30th of 2022. If you just think back a month or 2 months prior to that, everybody thought 2023 was going to be a year of a recession. And most enterprises set their budget in October or November of the year prior to when that budget's going to be spent. And so what we saw happening in October was IT budgets getting frozen across the board for 2023. And this is, again, in this era where only the CIO and the CTO kind of know what AI is. Now, ChatGPT drops on November 30th of 2022. And at this point, the CEO and the CFO and all the other C-suite, CRO, whatever, are able to interact directly with the system that they now kind of grok. 2023 rolls around. These budgets for IT are still frozen, But now the CEO understands AI or thinks that they understand what AI is. And so the only way that you were able to get any sort of budget for a tech project in 2023 in many of these enterprises was to do something with discretionary budget around Gen AI. And this is pre-agentic Gen AI. This is just the kind of like traditional ChatGPT Gen AI. And so a lot of science projects in 2023 happened because that was the only way to get a team to do a new cool thing. 80% of those probably shouldn't have happened from like a business point of view. And so 2024 rolls around, all these science projects start going into deployment. The 80% number comes out and says, hey, like this should not have gone into deployment. It makes no sense. 20% of them, though, should go into deployment. They go through GRC at that point, governance, risk, and compliance. And a lot of questions start to be raised around like, hey, what are the guardrails around these systems? How are they going to fail? How am I going to measure ROI? And so on. 2025 rolls around, these start to scale. You have the entire C-suite at this point understanding what AI is. Users are starting to use them. The technology is getting a lot better. You mentioned investors. Investors are pouring money into AI. The open source community is really starting to foster development of the space as well. And then also this agentic stuff starts coming into being. And so now we're in this sort of like perfect, I won't say storm, but we're in this world where we're launching agentic systems into deployment with the full support of the C-suite, with the full support of the investor community, with the full support of the public markets. We don't have the eval frameworks around those systems to measure ROI from a positive point of view and also to put guardrails on them to robustify them and so on. But there is a lot of power in the agentic system. So coming back to your original question, I know that was a sort of long-winded way to get to it, but if it comes to balancing some of the additional power that comes from new technology with guardrailing around it, but this is a question as all the time when it comes to regulation as well, which is, if I deregulate a lot, then I'm going to have a lot of exploration of new technologies, but those technologies might backfire in ways that are bad for society. Whereas if I regulate too early, then I'm going to stifle innovation and maybe I'm going to leave potential social welfare on the table because I disallowed the development of new technologies. And VCs, traditional investors, the government, et cetera, should be thinking about this in the same light as we've always thought about balancing regulation with the power of being able to innovate quickly.